go.
Well, welcome to the pilot version of Us Two Average Gamers podcast, name still pending. This is Flash speaking, and I'm joined by Yosh.
Hello.
And this is our first episode where we are going to take playing games and talking about video games and throw it into a podcast for your viewing pleasure. Today we are playing Dauntless, which is as we've sometimes described, a poor man's version of Monster Hunter, where you take what they call in this game slayers and go against giant animal beast thingies that try to kill you, and you farm their materials and you kind of rinse and repeat as you slowly get stronger and fight stronger, as they call them, behemoths. And it looks like first we're going to go against this Rage-Tail Gnasher, but we're not going to talk too much about what's going on in the game. We're going to be talking about free-to-play games, and this is a free-to-play game, but that'll be our topic of discussion. I'm going to let Yosh talk about our website, which goes along with this podcast.
Thank you. So, Julian already covered what we're going to be talking about with the podcast. We do have a website, 2averagegamers.com, which we've been writing now for a little over 2 years. Mostly doing video game news, tips, tricks, guides, rumors, and we have a store as well. So if you're interested in looking at any merchandise, got some t-shirts, got some game console accessories, so make sure you definitely check that out. And we try to post weekly, at least the written content. So with the podcast, we'll see how we do with frequency, but this is part one. Again, I'm going to be talking over some Dauntless gameplay. And our topic this week is free-to-play games. So the first question on our list is, what are free-to-play games?
And not to give the obvious answer, but I think I will anyway. A free-to-play game is a game that is free to play.
Yes.
To start playing, you don't have to drop any money. And if you were to ask us this when we were growing up, would this be the industry standard? I'm sure that we wouldn't be thinking that they'd be so widespread.
Definitely not.
What do you think?
I think that I did not see this coming at all, where most of the big name titles right now, especially if you look at Twitch viewership and even gameplay numbers, a lot of the top 10 are free-to-play games. And the ones that are successful, like Apex Legends, Fortnite, Call of Duty came out with their Warzone mode that's been crazy successful. It's really taken off, and I was caught off guard, I think, by Fortnite, but it seemed like a lot of companies have followed suit and just gone with that model.
Absolutely. And I think some of the games that I grew up playing that were free were a lot of the online games that we play on our browser. I think about Yahoo Games, playing the Yahoo Pool or some of the card games.
Oh, yes.
Those were free, but it's not that they weren't video games, they just weren't the same caliber of games like we grew up on, like N64 or Super Nintendo, Genesis, PlayStation, even PlayStation 1. Like, you were buying a game, like even to try a game, you were renting it. You were going to Blockbuster and, dropping $5 for 3 nights of playing a game, and you were happy with that deal.
Yeah.
So it's definitely come a long way.
Yeah, and I think one thing you touched on specifically is the caliber of games. I think that back in the day, a lot of the free-to-play games were very either low res or weren't very in-depth in terms of the amount of content that they offer. But now in 2020, free-to-play games, they'll have as much content as a lot of the AAA games that you're going out and dropping $60 for.
Yeah, so I guess we want to get into what's the next question, so we can kind of get into some of the specific topics of this.
Yes, first question is, why are free-to-play games successful? Which is a pretty loaded question, because not all free-to-play games are successful, but maybe some of the things that have made the big one successful.
Yeah, so I can take a first cut at this.
Yep.
I think one of the barriers to trying a game is not wanting to drop now $50 or $60 on a game, not knowing how good it is. And the renting industry, because of kind of the growth of piracy, has kind of dwindled because it's if you have the hardware, or I guess the software, I guess the hardware if you're talking about the disc, but the software in general, it's easy to kind of distribute that amongst your friends, and
Yeah.
that was making developers and producers kind of lose money because one person would get it and then they, conveniently kind of figure out a way that they can give it to other people. Um, I think that developers kind of realized that they needed to get the game in the hands of people, and then the quality of the game would kind of sell things. Once you get it, you'd be able to kind of invest money into it more once it's already in the hands of people. You're kind of relying on its upfront quality, which, that's kind of betting on yourself. But if you're putting out a good game, you shouldn't really have to worry about that anyway.
True. I think also with the rise of the internet, that changed things a lot. Back in N64 days, you weren't really playing anything online, at least not console-wise. And we both just died, that's kind of sad. But
Yeah.
once like PS3 came out and internet was pretty standardized across the gaming experience, just being able to play with people across the world became more appealing.
Absolutely.
And the price point, it's interesting because the price of games hasn't really gone up. Like you said, $50 or $60. I think it's been that way for at least as long as I can remember, maybe even a little bit higher. But when developers started realizing that content doesn't have to be a one-time thing, and you can either do DLC or even expansions on games, people for a free-to-play game are willing to just wait for that content either in a season pass or regular updates.
Yeah. It's I think being able to get money consistently, or even not just a one-time thing, has been something that's been popularized not just in the video game industry but also the music industry. And that's why what was it, like Napster, I guess, was the first version of it, but being able to share music or have a low or no entry cost fee and be able to have access to a lot of things is just the way that the entertainment industry has gone.
Right. I think there is also this aspect of expectations where free-to-play games, they can come out and not be full games. Like Fortnite it might even still be in early access, I'm not sure. But for developers, they can put out a game, say it's free in early access, and then collect feedback from the community and continue to iterate on that, versus just spending years on development and putting out a product that people may or may not like.
And they were kind of embracing that, because even the competitors, the games that were still selling for full price, were also not being released as kind of full products, whether that be intentional or not intentional. So you'd have a lot of day one patches that would frustrate people, because it's kind of in this day and age where we get digital games. You'd be downloading the game, you go to play, and you realize that now you have to, depending on your internet speed, have to deal with potentially another couple hours of download to actually play the game. Whereas back, at least in our day, you buy a game, you put the cartridge in or the disc in, and you're off and running. But I think the benefit of releasing a game that may not be all the way done is you can get community feedback, and you could be making updates to the game years afterwards, which GTA 5 isn't a free-to-play game. The online version is kind of included with the GTA 5, but that's a game that even today is still being given free updates to people, which is incredible, since the game is, I think, like 4 years old now, 3 or 4 years old
at least. And I think on the monetary side, it's been apparent, at least on what Fortnite has shown, is people are willing to drop hundreds of dollars on things like cosmetics. And I think in the online world where people are looking to customize and kind of differentiate themselves from their friends or competitors, they look to see what's available in those stores that can help them stand out.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect transition into, like, if a game is free, how are they actually making money? And cosmetics is a big part of it. I sometimes laugh at it, because when you're trying to win a game, it doesn't really matter what you look like. And sometimes, depending on the game, the cosmetic that you're buying, you literally aren't even seeing.
Yeah.
Like Apex Legends, for example, you have a skin on, but it's a first-person game, so you see the gun in the hand, but you don't see the rest of the outfit that you've spent maybe $5-10 on in real money if you do the conversion of the currency, which is one of the main tactics of how companies make money.
Yeah. And they are also able to sell each one of those skins for $5 to $10. I think Fortnite even back in the day had one that was $20. And so if you pull people in with this free to play experience and then you give them all these ways to make themselves different or unique, ultimately you'll probably end up with an average selling point on the game of over $60. I think each user then becomes more valuable to the developer.
Absolutely. It's genius in a way.
Yeah.
People don't really, if you're making several small to medium-sized purchases, you're not necessarily tracking it,
Yes.
which is, I guess we could have a whole podcast on budgeting, but that's not necessarily a video game topic. It's a way to continue to get people to spend money because, hey, it's only X amount of dollars right now, and, that's fine. Whereas if they were to try to sell the whole experience for, like you said, over $100, people would say absolutely not, and I'm never going to touch that game.
Right.
Spread it out over several months or over a year, then it's perfectly fine because you're not really noticing it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I wonder too and this is on the price side, but it seems like a lot of the games have gone the battle pass route where they'll say, okay, for the next 2 months or so we have this set of content and you can get access to it by paying probably $10. And so the first question is, which games have you seen that have done the battle pass well?
Yeah, I think for me, one of my first exposures was like Fortnite and also Rocket League. Which, both of them kind of have a very similar concept of you spend, I think it's actually for both and for almost every game I've seen, 950 coins or credits or their in-game currency, and you get access to what they call seasons, which sometimes lines up with the actual calendar season, but it's usually a little bit shorter, and you get access to maybe 10 to 15 weeks of content. And as you play, the more you play, you're able to earn your way up a ladder system of increasingly quote-unquote better cosmetics or things that you can add to your gaming experience that don't give you any type of competitive advantage. That's one thing that they have to steer away from, because then the game becomes what they call in the industry pay to win, and that can lead to a lot of negative feedback, because people that don't want to spend this money would be discouraged from playing the game, or they kind of be forced to play it or pay to be competitive, and that would take away from the overall experience.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of a battle pass being fair, is that it doesn't give people a competitive advantage. And so only having cosmetic items in there is, I think eventually people will complain about, they'll find something to complain about, but removing the option of pay to win has been really big.
Yeah. And I think one department that doesn't probably get talked about enough is the art department. These people that come out with these new skins or new, in Rocket League, decals, new car bodies, they're never stopping working, along with the developers too, but these are the ones that are really drawing people to want to spend money on the game.
Yeah, and I don't think I've ever actually bought a skin, but I've definitely paid for numerous battle passes. So I got the Fortnite one back in maybe season 2. Finally ended up getting this Dauntless one. Got the Apex one. And it was all just for cosmetics. And I think what you mentioned about Apex, you're not seeing the skin, but other people see the skin. And it's mostly about how much value do we attribute to somebody else seeing what you have.
Yeah. The funny part is, as I play against enemies, I notice their skin, but if I were to be asked after the engagement, I wouldn't be able to tell you what skins they have.
Yeah, same.
So in a way, it's kind of almost like a mental thing. It's like who's actually seeing this other than you in the lobby before you queue into the game?
Yes. I think going back to Fortnite, there were certain skins where if you saw it, you're like, oh no, I don't want to fight this guy. Like the John Wick skin.
Yeah.
Where I
Yeah,
think
and
those
that
ones
was
you had to actually accomplish something before you could get it.
absolutely. That's what I was gonna say. Is the battle passes did a good job of having a kind of a free version to give you a preview of how you can earn things, and then the more premium version, which gives you the more exotic skins. That kind of, it's almost like a status of, hey, I did play this game enough to earn my way up to the top.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's just time reliant. It's not necessarily even saying anything about your skill level. It's more just preservation and dedication to the game.
The one that I think is skill based would be on Call of Duty, where they have certain gold weapons where you have to complete 1,000 headshots with a specific gun.
Okay.
But I don't know that many games have gone that route.
Yeah, and Apex has a challenge system which helps you rank up faster, but if you play it enough, which probably would be a concerning amount, you don't even really need to do all of the challenges. It's more just you get it by playing the game. And Rocket League's kind of the same way. There's certain challenges of like score the X amount of goals or do assists, but they also have the ones that tell you to use a certain quick chat a certain amount of times, which, you know, that's really just spamming the quick chat, and that's not necessarily anything to do with your skill level in the game. So it's, I think balancing that is the perfect amount so that the people that reach the end feel like they've actually done something that not everyone could do, whether it's dedicating time more so than skill level, but also something that feels achievable even if you come short of, hey, I just need to play a little bit more, or hey, there's something I should work on, or I should just mainly focus in on the specific challenges, which give me a little bit of a buff to how I'm playing.
Right. And I think with the battle pass, from the ones that you've seen that you've paid for, what makes it worth it to you that you want to actually purchase that?
That is a great question, because the most recent one has been this game Dauntless, and I resisted for a while, but I think the extra earning bonus of in this battle pass, it gives you extra items on every hunt, which I didn't realize the full extent to what it was until we were told. And knowing that, I kind of was a little bit upset that I hadn't done it months ago, because this is a key component of the game of improving your weapons and armor, is having these items that having the battle pass improves that. So I feel like this battle pass is done well. And even inside of this battle pass, it's giving you certain currency like the H chips, which help you craft certain cells, which, not to get too much into this game, but it allows you to build things that you need faster, I guess, for the quickest version of that. So they're giving you enough things in the battle pass that are enhancing your gameplay experience without necessarily cheating people that don't have it. It just would take them longer to get it.
So I guess in that sense, do you feel that specific to Dauntless, their battle pass at all is pay to win if you're able to get things more quickly?
Yeah, I think pay to win, that might be I don't know if that's a full topic that we could get into, but it's almost like I sometimes view pay to win as a PvP experience versus a PvE experience. So, like, winning in this game isn't really taken away from another human's experience. And I don't know if that differentiation is something that developers take into account when they give things that accelerate your progress, or if it just kind of happened to be that way.
Yeah, I think the one part that might be in that direction is on the trials, where, without going into too much detail on trials, it's basically one test against a very strong behemoth, and you get to see leaderboards. And so if you see the first place people, they all have a ridiculous loadout or whatever it is. If they did have the battle pass, it's likely that helped them get it faster.
It's true.
But on the value side, which we touched on a little bit, what do you think is the right price for a battle pass?
I think they're doing it well. Like I said, a lot of the games usually are under 1,000 in-game credits, which a lot of them usually end up being 950, which usually comes out to be less than $10. And pretty sure they've done their research and just knowing that $10 is probably a break-even point of if people feel if it's worth it. And I mean, honestly, I feel like I'm in that too. Had it been $15, $20, I would have reconsidered, but $10 just or $9.50, I should say, just seems like the right amount.
Would you? Go ahead.
I will say one thing that they also do is even though it's $9.50, the games usually don't allow you to buy just $9.50 points. They usually make you buy more. So now you have an excess of points that may be able to buy you something cosmetically, but usually you'll have to earn more coins to get something of substance. So it kind of gets you into that loop, and you end up finding yourself like, am I gonna buy this or do I want to save up? That's something we didn't say, is these battle passes usually allow you, if you don't spend any other points, to be able to come in and buy the next season of the battle pass.
Yes, and I think it's almost to a dangerous point of how many credits or whatever the currency is that you can buy versus how much the battle pass costs. So I know for the $9.50 cost of battle pass, typically you'll have 50 left over, and then you can earn another 900 through the course of the season, maybe 1050. But you either have to make the decision to save enough credits for your next battle pass, or buy something from that season, and then have to put in more money. Which I think is genius from a business perspective, but I wonder how many gamers out there are considering that. Like, oh, I'm only going to put in $10, and then a month later you're putting in another $10, and that just repeats for 4 months.
Yeah, and I've seen both sides of it. In Apex, I haven't ever spent anything outside of the Battle Pass points, so every time I have to get a Battle Pass, I can just spend my in-game currency.
Yeah.
In this game, I have spent to earn better earning, I guess, velocity capabilities, so I just had to put in more real money to buy the second Battle Pass, and in a way, I feel like I lost, quote unquote, because I broke the cycle and I caved into what they wanted to happen. But I also kind of generalize it of, I've been playing this game for quite some time, and it is a free-to-play game, so I'm kind of looking at it as if this were a game that I paid for, I'm still not even halfway to what it would be on the shelf, most likely.
And that's actually a good segue into the next question on longevity. So you mentioned you got a lot of playtime out of Dauntless, for example. How much time do you expect to get out of a free-to-play game?
Well, I feel like it's a growing industry, and as we go further, or as we get further into the PS5 and Xbox Series X, is that what it's going to be called?
Yeah.
Not that we're a pro PlayStation podcast, but I think as we go further, we're just going to get more and more of these free-to-play models, and I think it's here to stay. So I think as we get further, it's not going to necessarily be about them being shorter or longer game shelf time on your library. In fact, if anything, it's probably going to be longer because of the constant updates that they're going to be giving you, even if it is just cosmetic. But a lot of them, there is there's content updates to it, the battle royale games. There's map changes or completely different maps, map updates or map changes. For this, there's escalations where we get different new behemoths to fight. So I sometimes question, if this were a game that we just paid up front and the developers got their money just from people buying it, would there still be that same type of urgency to keep the game fresh? And that's something I think as time goes on, we'll be able to see if there's a difference, or, if they start to kind of blend into one and more developers start to realize that, hey, I can make more money if I get the game in the people's hands, then be able to sell updates more and more. And it's more on us to stay relevant versus bank on the first initial cost.
Yeah, I think it also depends on developer. So I think of something like No Man's Sky, which had a ridiculous amount of hype in the beginning, and then it launched and it flopped so badly. But over the last couple of years, they've just been putting out more and more and better content to make it a better game. But then I think of games or developers like, I think EA is notorious for this. They'll put out the same Madden game with different rosters every year, and they know people are going to buy it. But it's not monumental change from iteration to iteration. So it's, I think, partially dependent on the developer, but it also seems like now as a gaming community, people are just getting more or higher expectations in terms of the frequency of which they get new content and the quality of that initial content.
Yeah, and I think the sport, like the sport scenario is perfect, because how would you think Madden would perform if the next Madden didn't have a year behind it, and it gave it to everyone for free, but you kind of had to buy your updates, the roster updates and whatnot. They kind of, instead of every year, they kind of just updated the game and updated different features, knowing that the core functionality is kind of going to be the same.
Yeah, I think it can make a huge difference, and that's something that I will be interested in trying. But Madden specifically, they have a monopoly on the NFL, so it might be a little different.
Yeah, I think the community would have to really try to unite and just hold the developers like responsible and accountable of the product they're putting out. But people are just going to buy that game regardless, and they're going to be mad about it, but they're going to come back each year because there's no alternative, and they have all the licensing rights, so it's difficult.
Yeah. Do you remember how long we played Fortnite?
I think for a year and a half, something like that.
It's longer than I was expecting.
But a thing like a sports game is, you're not necessarily going to get sick of playing that. If you like to play football or basketball, you're going to play football and basketball.
Right.
And usually people just buy stuff to get, one, to get the roster updates, and two, so that when they go online, they're playing against a community that's actually with them. Because otherwise, a lot of people say, are split between, is Madden 2005 or 2K5 like the best football game ever made?
Right.
So a lot of people would still be playing that if there was a community to play it.
Yeah, I think they would. And I also think there's some uniqueness to the Battle Royale genre, where a lot of developers saw Fortnite taking off, and then we saw a ridiculous amount of Battle Royales come out. And it's like most of those flopped.
Yeah, the one where you turn into a chicken after you die.
Yeah, Realm Royale.
Yeah.
That was popular for 4 weeks, and then it was done.
Yeah, very true.
But I think that for me, like, I typically want to get at least maybe half a year out of a game. And there's some that I've still been playing for years, like Clash of Clans, which almost embarrassed to admit. But that one is also free to play, and I'm proud to say that I've never put a single dollar into that, but I also have had probably hundreds of hours logged.
Yeah, that's true. Another game that I think of that is... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just think it's important that for free-to-play games, they need to make it so that if you don't want to put any money in, you can still enjoy it for a decent amount of time.
That's true. Like, you can't be locked out of content. One, because that would split the user base, but you just never want to make it a negative experience. It's more of just not having everything versus the fact, well, maybe, I guess the wording is a little mixed, but not feeling that I'm missing out on core content versus I'm just not able to get to the premium things of this game.
Yes. And on the content side, do you have, for a free-to-play game, do you have expectations around how frequently you get new content?
Yeah, I mean, like I said a little bit earlier, I think the quote-unquote season, or 10 to 12 weeks, a couple months is usually what I would expect. at that point things can start to get a little stale. So even if it's minor changes, that would help kind of return to the game, even if you start to slowly drift off from it.
Yeah. Do you, I guess from the Rocket League side, how regularly have they updated that game?
So they used to, or they were developed originally by Psyonix, and recently I think Epic Games purchased them, and their currency, their in-game currency was kind of crazy because it was, you'd earn a whole bunch of what used to be like boxes where you could earn, I think there were keys that opened them. And I had built up a whole bunch of different of these boxes that you could, there was also in-game trading, which I think other games should adopt, but you could earn a bunch of these boxes but not be able to open them unless you spent real money to buy these keys, and then you'd get a random chance at like 10 items that are in that box.
Okay.
In a way, it's a good idea, but also it felt like if I were to spend money, I still wouldn't even be able to guarantee I get what I want. I could open the box 100 times and still not get the one item in it that I want. And then once I have those other items, it's like, now what am I going to do with this? I'm going to try to go trade it with someone online who, you know, may not want it. So that kind of discouraged me from it. Plus, like, they did a good job of having enough unique content that I never felt like I needed to kind of get into that part of the game.
Yeah. And I think we could probably do a whole nother episode on loot boxes, but that's one thing that I feel like is in a lot of free-to-play games. It's not in this one specifically, but I know Call of Duty has like boxes you can open and get stuff out of, and it seems like that is just another revenue stream for the developers. Where I understand like they put millions, if not tens to hundreds of millions of dollars into development, they want to make their money back, but sometimes that borders on the edge of gambling, and that's caused other like regulatory issues.
Yeah, so people like to collect stuff, and so as soon as you put like a RNG factor on it, then it becomes, you know, I need to keep doing this until I get what I want. And it could just, I mean, that's how you get people to come back, but it's also kind of balancing trying to be ethically responsible so that you aren't really ruining people's either pockets or time, just obsessing over something that is really just being dictated by a random number generator somewhere.
Yeah. Sorry, I got a little off topic with the new content, but similar to additional content, I think a lot of the free-to-play games launch as single platform or either PC or console. What are your expectations in terms of free-to-play games coming to the crossplay area? Like, is this something that you think all of them should just work towards?
I'm hopeful that this next generation will be like almost crossplay will not be a thing anymore because it'll just be the standard. You know, I think that hopefully it seems as though the consoles and PC are realizing that everyone can have a piece of the pie and everyone can benefit, and allowing people to play with each other allows for more people to get the game.
Right.
If you have an Xbox and I have a PlayStation, we aren't probably going to get the same game unless we can play with each other, and that just sells for both contents. Like, it's not realistic that if we don't have the console, we're going to go out and buy the console and the game just to play the one game with one another, versus if we already have the console to buy it. So I think, yeah, just like it's a whole different type of looking at the problem and realizing that it's not necessarily a problem, but opportunity to work together. And, you know, I feel like the tech company and video games inclusive, it's always a this or that, where it's like, why not both? Or, you know, why not allow them to work together?
Yeah, and I think in the last few years, it's been eye-opening to see that the technology exists for there to be cross-platform. I think back in the day, it was like an issue of how do we get all of these servers to talk to each other? How do we get the compatibility to work? But developers have already shown this is something they could do. And it seems, at least on the Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony front, it's more a question of business-wise, do they want people sharing their communities among consoles?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're basically just playing little computers at this point, so...
Yeah.
I know that the games are developed in different languages, but for the most part, it's not for lack of ability anymore. It was for recently, it was more of just not wanting to and by legal issues of being able to play together. So, I hope that it becomes more standardized in the next generation and we don't have to worry about that. It's more of just, hey, I got it on this system, I can play it on this system.
Yes.
And like going along with that, we need more cross-platform profiles. So, if I want to pick this game up on PC, I don't have to start a whole... Well, I guess this is a little different because it's an Epic Games profile, but we need more developers to do that so that, I guess, more in a... Probably... let's see, what game? Fortnite would probably be an example if I were to buy... If I were to not buy, because it's free to play, but if I were to get that on PC or Xbox, I'd be starting from level 1 versus wherever level I ended up on.
Yeah, and that has caused even within our smart circle for people to not play like Apex Legends with us, where they have another console and they want to play but they just can't do it.
Yeah.
I think another big question I have is around how do they make things fair for PC versus console? Because I've tried that in the Call of Duty world, and it's definitely noticeable, especially with sniping. Like having that added precision of a mouse, it makes a difference. And people have complained in Fortnite about, oh, well, they have aim assist on the controller. But it's like, what is, or is there even a right answer to making things more even across platforms?
Yeah, I think just maybe doing more work into figuring out the best way to balance that. One easy solution would be to have cross-platform like lobbies versus ones that aren't, or even PC inclusive and not inclusive. But I think just putting in more work into figuring out the best way to competitively balance those games would be the best bet. Like you said, consoles do have not auto aim, but aim assist.
Yeah.
But still, probably a very good mouse and keyboard player would just dominate regardless. So I think they just need to dedicate more resources there. And a lot of these games, even if they say for ranked you can't do cross-platform, but play you can, that still is better than not allowing people to play together.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. And you talked a little bit about where you see it going in the future, but I'm really curious, especially in the next 10 to 20 years, what free-to-play looks like. Because I think back to the Sony Days of Play event, all of those games, or it looks like all the games you're going to have to purchase. But then I think about esports and how that's been growing. Like CSGO is always going to be big. Valorant is now getting big. Apex is getting big with their World Series or whatever it is. So how do you see on the esports side continuing to grow?
You asked about the esports or the... Could you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah, on the predicting the growth of the future, if that's something that esports will continue to drive free-to-play games, or if you see this being outweighed by like the AAA titles that are still $50 to $60 that people are buying.
Yeah, I personally think it's not necessarily going to matter if it's free to play or not. It's really just what the community dictates is the best game. And as the free to play games become more popular, it's not necessarily going to be if people aren't really going to be paying attention to that. It's just going to be may the best or most fun game win. And if that's a free game, then it's a free game. Rocket League isn't a free game, or wasn't, but I did get it during a free month.
Yeah,
so,
same piece.
Like thinking back, that was actually just kind of remembering that it wasn't, but it very well could have been. And the model that they have, they'd be profitable. I'm not even sure what it sold for. I don't know if it was a full $50 or $60 game or if it was more in the 20 or 30 range, but it was, I think just the fact that I'm not sure is kind of where I think the industry is going to go.
Yeah.
Or kind of already is.
It's interesting because when I think of the big games like 10 years ago, I can't really think of a very quickly growing game. It's like maybe there are some MMOs that were starting to get big, but now with how quickly Apex and Fortnite grew, I can't think of a similar game that people paid for that grew that fast.
Yeah, I guess the first thing I was thinking is Halo, but that might even be further back.
Mm,
Well, that's definitely further back if
yeah,
you want to go back to the first one. But
yeah.
like the competitive for console at least, yeah, there's not necessarily something that like grew that fast that wasn't like banking on the history of its its like platform already
Yep.
or the series already. Like
Final question.
Counter Strike is still very popular, and that game is I don't even know how old. So
Decades.
yeah,
And it seems like that is even still growing.
yeah, it's scary. I almost want to play it, but I know that that people it just wouldn't be a good experience getting absolutely destroyed.
Destroyed,
So.
yeah. Well, last question on the list for now. I'm curious what you think this model will look like in 20 years. If you think it'll be more of the same, or if there's specific things that you think need to be added or changed to the model to keep up with the sustained growth.
Well, I think we're starting to see it with Google and Amazon already starting like the subscription like model.
Mm,
I'm not sure if I'm not sure what that's going to look like exactly, but I think some type of model where you're kind of subscribing to the console and there's maybe a revenue share with the developers in some way of what games you get. And in theory, you have access to everything, and maybe they like track how much you're playing it and decide that you know you either may have to pay more money here or it gets redistributed here to another developer.
so,
But I think just reducing the entry completely and just allowing you to play anything immediately is going to be the best way for people to get the game, decide they like it, and keep the game.
so would you be, for yourself, would you be willing to pay just $10 a month for Netflix type access rather than playing $10 on a battle pass?
Well, that's interesting because that could be a very nice math question. If you pay $10 for a console, at what point do you reach, the potential $500, $600, $700 console? And it's like, I think that's a situation where people would be more adverse to paying the money up front versus realizing, hey, I don't want to pay this money indefinitely, realizing how long like a current generation may last. And you may come out like on the better side of it if you just break it down into a monthly cost. But that may be hard to sell to people because people just aren't going to think about it that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do also wonder with the way that computing power improves and how mobile devices, especially with some of the gaming phones out now, how that changes things for the competition between like mobile casual gamers and hardcore gamers who are the ones who are driving the growth of like Fortnite, Apex, Valorant.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe like a level of subscription, but I don't know how they would balance that. I just feel like it's putting too much pressure on developers to say, I'm gonna spend X amount of years to develop a game that has like, even if it's 20 hours of gameplay, and be able to justify someone spending $60 for it, and like as soon as they're done it, there's really nothing else to get out of the game.
Right.
And there's not necessarily really a market for reselling these games because it's a game that if someone wanted it, they would have already gotten it. So it's a challenge for sure.
To follow up on that, do you see the classic $60, $50 game model going away anytime soon?
Maybe not anytime soon because I feel like developers, I mean, change takes time and people usually are resistant to change, so I think it will probably shift more towards free or even lower entry game because even if it's not free, you still may want to get some type of initial investment.
Yeah,
But
that's fair.
I mean, you see these reviews of these games that are highly anticipated, and then like the very first review that you see about it is people just call it trash. And like if major media says that, then that can just ruin a game's build up for years and years on end. Like I'm sure you could just name off plenty of quote unquote flops.
Yeah.
And like I let that review dictate. Like for the most part, I let that dictate if I'm going to get the game, and I very well may like it. So if it's free, I could decide that on my own versus, saying, well, they don't know what they're talking about, which they very well may not know what they're talking about, but do I want to spend $50, $60 and challenge that? And then I'm feeling sad when I realize that, hey, I see what they mean. This game probably isn't that great. So now what am I going to do? Because as soon as you walk out of a GameStop or a Best Buy or whatnot, now the 90%, 80-90% of your cost is gone, just like you bought a new car and drove off the lot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a risk.
I think the other thing too is a lot of free-to-play games, you don't need a physical CD or cartridge or whatever it is. A lot of them you can just download. I think that, along with the low barrier to entry of not having to put down any money, it just makes it that much more accessible to new players.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, we'll probably have a whole podcast on digital gaming, but that's here, and that's only going to get more and more prominent.
Yeah.
I mean, why would I want a disc or cartridge if something that could break, I could lose, versus just storing stuff in the cloud? Which I know I know the flip side of that is a concern about like what you actually own. Is it tied to like your console, or is it tied to your account, or even the resale like market, for example, or not for example, but the resale market like in its entirety that would basically die. But I just feel like that's more of just the evolution of the industry, and the positives are just going to outweigh the negatives in those regards.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And when I look back at the last probably 3 years of just my own personal gaming, I'd say 80 to 90% of it has been in free-to-play games. And part of that is because I have a ridiculously addictive personality, and I think the other part is that there's just really good free-to-play games out there.
Yeah.
So I guess...
And the off chance that you actually play that game, that's one more time that you'd play that game versus never playing it, because I'm sure you wouldn't be buying all these games to potentially play versus getting them in hopes that you may play them eventually.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the last question on our list. Did you have any follow-up questions, or did you want to just go to closing remarks?
I guess we can try to close it out. I think we got to a certain time length. I'm not sure. We've done a couple of hints there.
Yeah, we're at about 50 minutes right now, which
okay.
I think it's been pretty good. I hadn't even considered some of the things you talked about, so I think just for me, thinking through what it means from a developer's perspective to create a game that has longevity and can be something that is accessible to a lot of people and enjoyable, but also potentially just find a niche where it's like they have their own set community that a small number of people really enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I would echo those remarks. I think that, like I said, I think this is free-to-play is the way to, if you do it right, it's the way to make money over the course of time. And I think as more developers see this and realize this, we're going to see more free-to-play games out there, and we're going to have different models. It doesn't always have to be the battle pass model, but we may see different ways for them to get money over a course of time, and different ways for gamers themselves to be able to experience a game and not feel so committed to like dropping half of $100. And especially for kids these days that may be relying on parents to buy the games.
Yep.
If you say you want this game for Christmas and you don't like it, then it's like, dang, now I gotta wait for my birthday.
Yo. And you said
So
one thing that I actually forgot about is just commitment. Like when I think of the last game I probably paid for was maybe Red Dead 2, and I paid $60 for that, and I feel bad that I didn't put that much time into it. Like a free-to-play game, if I don't put 100 hours into it, I'm not mad about any of that.
true. Yeah, I mean, it lets you kind of, with the models that they allowed for making money, it lets you kind of enjoy the game at your own level.
Yeah.
And I would say that everyone wins in that situation, because if you want to play it more, then there's avenues for you to spend money and enjoy it more, or have access to more without. The crucial part again is not gaining a competitive advantage over the people that just don't want to do that, want to play. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
yeah, it just balances it properly, and if executed correctly, I think that it should be what we see moving forward.
Well, I know you haven't touched too much of Fortnite in the last probably year or so, but I think they've been doing a good job of getting a social aspect into the game, where this becomes like your new social media hangout versus spending time on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is. You can go into these games and just like hang out with your friends.
That's true. Yeah, that game really does a good job. I know we've always joked about coming back to it, and that's a game I would kind of like to revisit. I think they just released the third season, and third seasons are a little different than what we've been talking about, but third seasons are kind of correlating to the actual map. So it's like a third iteration of the full map changing. So, you know, that team has really embraced the model and realized that how much money they can make off of content changes to the map, cosmetics, and just even the dances. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing, is how much of a social and societal phenomenon that became. And you know, they did it right, and I think everyone's kind of looking up at them, whether people agree that they're the best battle royale game currently or not. You know,
Right.
that's a whole nother discussion, but you can't really decide if I think the decision has been made on who's the most successful financially right now, and they, until further notice, are the king.
Yeah, and I'm kind of excited to see who comes out and tries to take them down. Like it was very apparent that Apex grew quickly, but to reach their level of success, I think will take a lot of iterations and thought from the developers.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all I had on the topic for now. I think if wherever we do post this, if people want to weigh in and give their thoughts on free-to-play games and what they think about the industry, and if they think it's going to grow, or if they like it or hate it, you know, let us know.
Yeah, and I think this was a pretty good format. We'll probably just continue to iterate on it as we get feedback from people, but I like for it to be more casual than structured, and I think this worked pretty well.
Yeah, and we'll probably come up with a couple more topics, but if there's anything that you'd like us to discuss or whatnot, we can definitely pick that up and kind of give you our thoughts.
Yes, sir. And hopefully next time we'll have a name figured out.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to make us a theme song, we could play that too.
Yeah.
I guess we can close it out. Since we don't have a theme song, we can't play that right now, but if you want to make one up in your head, you can play that. There you go. Hopefully that isn't a violation of anything.
That'd be unfortunate.
Oh, I gotta die. That's a good way to end it.
Nice, bro. All right, well, GG.
Yep, GG.